Family business makes no sense. So let's talk about it.
Welcome to another Family Business Challenges video. I'm Jon Kenfield, the Family Business Solutionist, broadcasting from Melbourne in Australia. I've been working with family businesses, helping them to get their conflicts resolved for a very long time. And along the way, I've come to understand that as a starting proposition, you're in a crazy environment. Family business as a concept makes no sense, even if there are lots and lots of family businesses around. But family and business is an oxymoron. The two concepts do not go together comfortably, and you certainly have to shake them pretty hard and work them hard to make them work well together. And frequently, and particularly over a long period of time, most families in business will find that they are in conflict, often a conflict that has been brewing for decades within the family that then gets acted out in the family business. And that's where I get involved, being asked to help resolve the conflict, which is threatening to derail both the family and the business, unless one of them is going to be sacrificed for the sake of saving the other, which is not a good outcome. Often a family is looking for a quick fix. They are hoping that some magic will take place and the problem will be solved. The bad news is the sort of complex problems that have a long history that we come across in a family business, because they're rooted usually in family dynamics, do not lend themselves to a good, durable, quick fix. Instead, we have to unpack the problem. We have to identify the root cause of the conflict. We need to understand why the wheels fell off, so we can then put the train back on the tracks and do it in such a way that it's going to stay on the tracks heading in the right direction. And that means we need to get to know the people well, we need to know what's going on, we need to know what's driving them. And these are the things that lead to many, many common causes of conflict in a family business. So what I'm going to be talking about in these videos is at least 50 common causes of conflict. And I call them common because I found all the things that I'm going to be talking about occurring in all sorts of family businesses, from very small to very large, often in multiple combinations within an individual business. This video is cause number one, personality differences, and the reason they are one of the common causes of conflict in a family business. First of all, let's talk about what we mean by personality. Personality is a person's outward manifestation of their character. It represents the sum total of how they are likely to think, act, behave in any given circumstance, given the nature of their emotional, intellectual build, conditioning, and many, many other factors. So personality is a predictor of behavior. When we think of any person that we know, we tend to think of their personality and prepare ourselves for interactions with them based on that assessment of their personality and how they're likely to interact with us in any given situation. So personality is a predictor of behavior, and therefore if we have personality differences happening in a family business, which is inevitable, because if we think of, again, any family that we know, whether in business or not, we're frequently left wondering whether all of the kids could have possibly come out of the same set of loins, because they're so different in their personalities and their makeup. When we talk about personality differences in a family business, and particularly a family business conflict context, we're normally putting a negative connotation on the word differences, because we're assuming or we're identifying the fact that the differences are potentially a cause of conflict. So that's what we need to examine. We need to understand who's who in the zoo, what their personalities are. We need to unpack some of their interactions, and we need to get insights into their personalities, because that will give us clues that ultimately take us back to the root cause of the conflict. Now, personality differences will therefore lead to different and potentially clashing mindsets in individuals, leading to different behaviours, different thinking processes, different methods of problem solving, decision making, communicating, and many other factors. Radically different personality types will have radically different behaviours in, again, almost any given situation. And if those differences cause clashes over time, because there is an inability to leverage the diversity in the different perspectives, but instead we've got something else working itself out in the business as a consequence or partial consequence of the differences in the personalities, then that leads us into some pretty heavy clues about what we need to do to resolve the conflict. We'll need to change some of the behaviours. We may not be able to change the personalities, but we can most certainly get those personalities to recognise the impact their particular personal preferences are having on others and on themselves, and they may be able to change those behaviours consciously, even if they're not able to significantly change their personalities. Now, one of my observations would be that when we have weak governance systems in the family, particularly during the growing up years, and that translates into weak governance systems in a family business, that will lead to having very vague boundaries, unclear roles and responsibilities for individuals, unclear authority levels, and an overall lack of discipline in the way things operate. Now, a business, to work efficiently, has to have rules. You don't want to be reinventing the way you're doing things at all times. So we need to have clarity about what's expected of people in any given situation. We need a culture of discipline, and in the business we need to work out whether that's a business culture, a family culture, or usually something in between, because the consequence of not having any proper systems or rules or discipline is we end up with low trust. And we'll talk about low trust environments in family business in a lot more detail in some of the other videos that are coming up. Take it from me for now that where we assume a family business is a high trust, high love, high nurture environment, a great many of them, and particularly the ones that have fallen into conflict, are the exact opposite. They are very, very low trust environments where people delude themselves into thinking they've got trust and everyone's got everyone's back, where the reality is nearly everybody's out the back room sharpening up the knives on the whetstone, waiting to sink it in. Now, in that situation, we find that pressures at some stage, perhaps aging parents, struggle for succession, for leadership, financial pressure when people are underpaid, a whole raft of different things, can create circumstances where it takes a very small catalyst to make all of the emotional baggage that somebody has been carrying perhaps for decades explode in the workplace with disastrous consequences. So we've now got conflict and we need to work out how to deal with it. Now, I'm not going to talk about how to resolve conflict in this particular session. I'm going to talk about strategies now for preventing those personality differences creating the problems in the first place. And the first thing to note is that if there is any expectation that family members will work together in the family business in the future, parents really need to look to the way that they are parenting their kids from an early age to make sure that they've got appropriate training, appreciation of differences and diversity, capacity for joint problem solving and teamwork, because they're the skills they're going to need to build on in life and definitely in the business. If parents create an ultra-competitive environment in the household, then they shouldn't be surprised when they get highly competitive environment in the workplace, or more often, a dominant sibling and resentful sibling or siblings, which is another formula for conflict in the workplace, unless the dominator is recognised as being so competent, it's well worth everybody's while to hitch their wagon to them. That isn't always the case, and it creates problems, as does the differences between male and females, where one might have a far more competent female sibling, but ethnic challenges make it very difficult for a family to allow a female to be in charge of the business, and particularly in charge of perhaps older male siblings. And I've seen quite a few situations where on a rational basis that would have been the sensible thing to do, but on an emotional basis, family couldn't do it. So what we're talking about is bringing up your family to be an effective family team. Train them to work together, train them to research together, train them to make decisions together, train them to leverage the diversity so they get lots of different perspectives and people are able to develop their different skills. And then you might have a very strong management team that is comfortably able to recognise where the leader should be and where the support personnel should be. In my view, that's the best way to deal with personality differences, to prevent them turning into a cause of conflict later on in a family business. The next video that we're going to be talking about some of the family baggage that I mentioned, the emotional baggage that I mentioned earlier in this video, and that'll be cause number 2. Look forward to seeing you then. If you know anybody else who may benefit from this series, please give us a like, let them know, and I look forward to talking to you next time around. Thanks.